What we're going to do next is to focus on this idea of controllable versus uncontrollable, and the way that we, as leaders, focus our mindset on civility. So we're going to work through today with a framework. And Megan, I am unable to control. Oh, there we go. Uh, we're going to work through this framework around civility and leadership. As leaders, civility doesn't just happen. It is created and shaped by us as leaders through these intentional moments where we not only establish clear expectations of what does it look like when we have good civility as a culture? What does it sound like? How do I hold myself and others accountable? That's all the job we do as leaders to shape that culture. And when we do it really well, what we see is those individuals within that culture experiencing civility, but also showing civility to one another. So, as leaders, we need to set that clear expectation, but we also need to model that day in and day out, even on our best days or our worst days. Our job is to establish those expectations and to show them. And when we do that well, when we shape that culture and we get the outcome of the individuals showing those character aspects of civility in their interactions, we get what we call optimal performance. And in this case, it's civility. That optimal performance is we are treating each other with civility. So our role as a leader is to take that ownership on. And the outcome we get when we do that well is we see an increase in both trust and credibility. We were sharing earlier about these, I think it was Clarence that was saying these opportunities that we have that we build trust with one another. When we show moments of civility, when we model that, we are building that trust in each other, in our teams, that not only are they going to see that from us, but I'm going to expect that as a leader from other people. When we as an individual, or when I as an individual do civility better in my day to day, I'm going to end up promoting that positive culture, and I'm going to create a strong bench of leaders. I know most every single one of us on this call are constantly thinking about who is coming up next. Joe, Christina, and both Catherine spoke about that today. Those, you know, those leaders that we see as the next generation that will be taking this over, we want to create that strong bench, but how do we show them what's possible? How do we show them a leader who is civil? When we do that well, when I do that well, we as the collective improve. We also see an outcome, of course, of increased communication and collaboration skills when we do civility well, especially during challenging times. I don't need to go through every single challenging time we are having right now, but I think every single one of you on this call have experienced challenging times, maybe within the last hour. Most of us can, at least in the last probably 48 hours, identify something that has been challenging. And when those come up, when we do civility well as an individual, we are able to help the culture be better at communicating and collaborating during those times. And sustainability, we are always looking for how do we sustain well. When I, as an individual, take the ownership of what can I do better or differently, we see an increase in the culture as a collective. But often what we do, and we do this as humans, we point outwards. I feel like my culture is not civil. What should everyone else be doing? And so today during this section, we really want to just focus on what can I do as an individual? How do I lead with civility? And I today am going to show you a tool. So we at the Robert D. and Billie Ray Center, we work with the Excellence with Integrity Institute, and we use tools and strategies to help us in our leadership. So when thinking about today and thinking about civility, one of the things that I think is the most effective is thinking, how do I control my own mindset so I have a civility mindset in my interactions? I'm going to lead with civility, and in order to do that, I need to have a civility mindset first and foremost. So I'm reacting with the mindset of, I'm going to, in this interaction, have civility. That is my number one priority. And so what I'm sharing with you today is a tool. It's called our in and out of control self-study tool. I love this tool, and I come from an education background, and the work that I do is primarily with educators and business leaders. I love this one because for me, it is a very clear visual. I love the visuals of a reminder for myself what is in my control at this moment and what is out of my control. And what that helps me do is focus on a solution for next. How do I get to the next thing that I need to do? So when we're thinking about civility, what we're really thinking about is that tool that allows us to focus on a solution so we can find civility in those moments. So thinking about the challenging conversations that we're having or situations where we don't have control. If you can lay out in this tool, anything within the circle is the thing I have control of. I know that I can find a solution and maybe common ground with that person I'm working with. And everything that is outside of that circle within that rectangle, I've got to let go. And like I said, that visual for me is huge. Sometimes I make this little image for myself, and I use this to remind myself what's in my control and what's out of my control. Because ultimately, if I can think about what I can control, and what I can control is normally my actions and my mindset, and what I cannot control is just things I need to ignore at that moment, I'm now able to focus on that solution. I'll give you a few examples. So in the public arena, COVID obviously was completely outside of our control. We cannot control a international pandemic. But in the public arena, what we can control is maybe at the county level, how testing is done, right? We might have some control of that. So now I'm solution focused. What felt like out of control, what felt like maybe would test my patients, would cause me stress, I know I can't control those outside elements, but what I can control is how we get testing done here. And I'm going to make sure it's accessible to people. At the city level, I saw in the comments, it was great. I saw the Urbandale pledge shared. Scott Racker, it's from Urbandale. And so we use that often as an example. So in that, you're setting the expectations of how meetings will go, how interactions will happen. You can control that. You can establish those expectations. But you can't control the interactions of, say, two impassioned groups, maybe two soccer teams trying to figure out how to share the soccer field space, right? You can't control that those groups are fighting. But what you can control within your element is you set those expectations, and are you going to hold people accountable to them? If we've established that we'll treat each other with care and respect, and in those conversations, that's not happening, you as a leader have control. And now we can refocus. Okay, these are our expectations. How are we going to continue to both treat each other with care and respect, but also figure out a solution? These soccer fields can be shared and we can get this figured out, but we're not going to continue to have those conversations. So using this tool, you can also think about social media. I mean, that's probably I was having a conversation earlier today about social media. It's just at the top of our minds constantly. And quite frankly, it's often the negatives of social media. So remembering, of course, that you can't control what people say. That is outside of your control as an elected official or in the public service arena. You cannot control that. And let's be honest, people say some wild things. You can't control that. But what you can control often is, can you limit people saying things anonymously? Can you force those places where people can share opinions to be a place where they don't have anonymity? We all know that people are a little more likely to tailor what they say when their name is attached to it. Not always, but maybe we can focus on that. So now I can't control what people are saying, but what I can control are maybe limits or kind of forcing hands to engage more civilly. You know, at the local government level, hybrid work environments were a huge thing for a very long time, figuring out like how do we get that? You can't control that certain jobs can't be done remotely. And I know that was a big piece of some of this return to work is, it's not fair, or it's not, it's not enjoyable for me if I don't have the option to do hybrid work. But what you can control is you can control in that space how people come back into that work and really think positively. You can lead that. On a personal level, on my end, I can't control that my almost 13-year-old has a whole lot of sass in the mornings as we try to get out the door. And quite frankly, she probably inherited it from me, so I can't get too frustrated. But what I can control is I can choose how I respond. I can choose in that moment to validate her feelings. Yes, it's frustrating and hard to get out the door. Uh, but we're also going to try to figure out how we get out the door with everything that we need and without you taking off my head. So I can't control that she has that sass, but what I can control is how I respond and how I focus on a solution. So what I want you to do now is I want you to think of a situation you've either faced within the last week or the last month, because like I said, for some of us it's the last hour, but for some of you maybe it's a little bit longer. But a recent challenge that you faced, and I want you to start to sort that into what was in your control and what was out of your control. So you can, on a piece of paper, draw that rectangle and put that circle in the middle, and visually show yourself what was in my control and what was outside of my control. So you can do that for just one, or if you have a few, but I'm going to give everyone just a few moments to think about a recent challenge that they've had and what was in your control in that situation and what was out of your control. Okay, so here is what we are going to do next. Hopefully everyone thought a little bit about that, because what we're going to do is I'm going to, in just a moment, send you into breakout rooms, and I will send this question in the chat so you have this question. Oh, rock chip week after new windshield. Uh-oh, out of my control, that chip in my control, verifying that I had a warranty. There you go. Absolutely. So again, personal level or work level, I love this tool. It's one of my favorite to take to really focus on my mindset. Or otherwise, I am that we are running off the cliff. The worst thing's going to happen. Nope, let's get back into what's in my control and how can I focus on a solution? How can I figure out I've got that warranty and take the next steps to make sure I get that chip taken care of? So we're going to do a breakout room here in just a moment. And I encourage all of you to stay. I know that sometimes a breakout room, you don't have your camera on. That's okay. Please stay and engage in these breakout rooms. We're going to have you have a conversation around how does a civility mindset, so again, that focus on my mindset is going to be civil in this moment, help leaders focus on constructive solutions and engage others productively around what cannot be controlled. But what I would like to do now is those of you who are willing to share, what were some of the conversations that you were having in your breakout rooms?
This is, I was in group 6, and one of the gals in our group brought up that when they have a person that keeps repeating themselves, over and over, that perhaps they need acknowledged that, yes, I hear what you're saying, because her thought was that if they keep repeating themselves, they don't think we're hearing them.
Yeah. So that person continuing to repeat themselves, what did you talk about that was kind of in your control in that situation?
Well, we didn't get that far. We got ended.
Okay. But in that situation, right, what you have control is how you validate that person, how you hear them, how you understand them. We often say, somebody who might continually, sometimes you have those friends that challenge you, right? Somebody who might continue to be a problem. If you address just the behavior over and over again, you're kind of playing whack-a-mole. So having a conversation, what you can control in that is maybe having a conversation with that person. Maybe there's something a little bit more layered to that as to why. Absolutely. And as a leader, if we want to set that example of civility, we need to model that. We need to show that I am willing, even though maybe somebody continues to challenge me, I am going to sit down and I'm going to have a conversation. I'm going to focus on relationship with them. What else did we talk about? Thank you for sharing. Someone else want to share?
When you're talking with a person and how you should go towards them, like if you roll your eyes, they're going to go away right away. You can control your arms, you can control your voice, you can control your tone, you control your body movements to make sure that person feels validated during your conversation.
Absolutely. And some, again, challenge us more than others to be able to control that. And when that happens, it is always okay. What is also within your control is to say time out. This is not a productive conversation. We are not moving this forward in a way that I am displaying civility, and I don't feel like you're displaying civility. So we're just going to pause this and we're going to come back tomorrow, or we're going to set this time. If you're going to pause, make sure you set a time that you can talk. But part of being that civility mindset is also to know that you might have some guardrails that you have to establish to make sure, and that might be for yourself too, like, I don't feel in control of what I know I should be able to control right now, so I need to just pause. That is also really important to understand. Thank you. That's a great example. How about one more group?
I shared in group number 2 that I thoroughly enjoy moderating town meeting. I live in Maine, and many of our communities have that's the voting body, and they meet mostly once a year. And the reason that I enjoy it is it's like a little civics lesson at the beginning of the meeting, and I can challenge them by describing what their job description is for the next 2 or 3 hours, and bring them to the point where their job is to listen respectfully until it's their turn to talk. And they'll know it's their turn to talk because I will have told them. And if I didn't tell them, it's not their turn. And and it's at the point now where I've done it enough that they can tell me that at the beginning of the town meeting. Yeah, in
Yeah.
several communities. And I'll say, great, we're ready now because we're all neighbors at the beginning, we're all going to be neighbors at the end. So let's make sure that we all use that respectful focus. And it's setting the stage for that. And then the challenge is occasionally somebody says something that is rude, and interrupting and reminding them and doing that in a way that is civil. That's probably the biggest challenge. But it's amazing to me how the peer pressure keeps them in line.
It really
It
does. You are
does.
absolutely right. Yeah, you make a really good point. You go back to that first graphic that we shared about what is our role as a leader within shaping that culture of civility. We have to model it, but it's also our job to establish clear expectations and follow through on accountability. So just like you said, when that's not happening, when there are moments where someone is not falling in line with those expectations, it's our job as a leader to hold other people accountable and encourage the collective. We always say the difference between in a setting of somebody who is a participant versus somebody who is a leader. A participant shows up and follows the expectations for themselves. A leader holds themselves and others accountable. And the leader doesn't have to be just the person who's talking. Everybody's eyes are on each other, and that sort of social contract that we have with one another to what is that culture in that space? What does it look like? So somebody coming in for the first time, if you have done a great job as a leader to not only establish expectations, but hold people accountable, it's just the way that space operates. And somebody brand new is going to come in there and pretty quickly learn, oh, I guess that's how they do things here. That's not how I experienced it in another town hall, but okay, I guess we do practice civility around here. And like you said, they will fall in line really, really quickly. I love some of these examples I'm seeing in here. I see Robert, I use Rotary's 4-way test to help adhere and encourage others to use a civility mindset. You ask yourself 4 questions for each decision. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? So thinking about that, what's in and out of my control. Before a decision, I have the ability to go through that checklist to make sure that I'm in alignment with what I want as civility in the situation. And so I can do that. I know that I have the ability. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to end up outside of that circle for myself. But if I focus on that checklist that I can control, I know I can turn into, okay, what is our solution? What are we going to do next? Because sometimes in these situations, what we end up doing either on a personal level at home when we're stressed about it, or even in interactions with people, we keep going back and forth about those in and out of control items. But if you as the leader can focus on what's in your control and get the group as a collective to move forward, we are now out of that space where we're arguing about that in and out of those elements of in and out of control in terms of you did this, you did that. Well, I think this, well, I think that. Let's focus on what I can control as a leader and get us to move forward. So thank you so much. I see some other great examples in here in the chat. Be sure you can continue that conversation in the chat. But where I want to leave with you today is this idea that leadership isn't always a choice. Leadership is often put on you, whether you're ready for it or not. I know as a very young leader, it was all of a sudden thrust upon me because I seemed like the most responsible of teenagers. But that happens in a ton of settings. Some of you may ended up being part of a PTO group or part of an organization within your community because you had the most responsible parent of the group. It's not always a choice. And who we lead, like we shared earlier, is not a choice. You will lead people who you have a ton of similarities to, and it can be easy. You are going to also lead people who challenge you. And I know every single one of you on this call probably have ample example. You might have immediately thought of that, like that one person when I said that, but how you lead, how you show up, how you choose to have a civil mindset, how you choose to engage with the tools that you have in your tool belt is a choice. How you show up every single day as a leader is your choice.